see somebody's lips move, you know.
Yep. Alrighty, let's go ahead and get started. So let me introduce you.
Okay.
I'd like to introduce Galen Warden. Galen is a retired marketer caring for her adult son, James Strazza, who has been 100% bedbound since 2019. Her blog and videos have been inspired by those with severe ME who have reached out to her for practical and emotional support. Her book, I Believe You, When Doctors Won't, a Mother Must, will be published in the fall of 2025. All right, take it away.
Okay, thank you. I want to start by saying that I am not a psychologist or a therapist. I'm just a caregiving expert. I have a lot of experience with that. I raised 6 kids alone, 3 of whom survived life-threatening events. And I cared for my dad in hospice until he passed. And then I cared for his widow, my stepmother, with stage 4 Alzheimer's for a further year. So I have a lot of hands-on experience with caregiving, but none of that prepared me for a very severe ME. And I had a fast learning curve, but I've been doing it for 5 years now with my son, and I've learned a lot, and I really enjoy helping people and sharing what I've learned. So let me see. Okay, how to advance it. Okay, all right. My agenda. This is just a list of the topics I'm covering. Ambushed, understanding the brain, the ME brain, gaslighting, communicating, surviving ignorance, which is just so important, and coping with suffering. This is a picture of my son. We were in USA Today newspaper both in 2022 and 2024. Great to be able to get out there in the public domain to share our stories, but obviously it's not enough. Okay. If you get cancer or lupus or MS, the back of your mind, you'll be thinking, I know what this is. Gives you a chance to kind of comprehend what you might be facing, but nothing prepares you for ME. Our doctors don't even recognize the symptoms, and you probably were left to figure it out for yourself. And if your family doesn't believe you, you can really feel abandoned during the scariest, most desperate time of your life with this new disease. What is happening? Why is this happening to me? When will it end? Will it get worse? Will I become like the worst cases I've seen? ME is a many-headed hydra. The ME is merciless. You chop one head off and 2 back. You fight for independence and you become more dependent. You fight to do something fun for your mental health, and then you spend the next 2 days unable to do anything at all. Whatever you're struggling to overcome, it overcomes you. So maybe fighting isn't the answer. Maybe the answer is to learn how to cope. But if you come to this disease with existing emotional challenges, family rifts, past traumas, you have a legitimate coping disadvantage, and I'd like to help you. So rather than fighting ME, which you can't win that fight, turn your rage on anything that steals your power. You must have your wits about you to deal with ME. So if pre-existing trauma has left you shaky about who you are, or if you don't love yourself, or if you lack self-esteem, these are things to fight for. You're in the fight of your life to be able to cope with this, not to heal yourself with positive thinking, not to wrestle your disease to the ground by trying harder. The real fight is in your heart and your mind, where you can be mentally overcome by this intensely overwhelming disease. I'm going to teach you about your brain's responses to your situation, and this will help you better manage and cope with the impossible. So understanding your brain's responses. Here I describe 3 major areas of your brain and the way these areas are activated to respond to your situation. The reptilian brain, the mammalian brain, and the cerebral cortex. Your reptilian brain is so named because it's primitive. It's engaged in the most basic needs of surviving, defending against threats, and mating. Instincts, urges, and impulses are the domain of the reptilian brain. Your mammalian brain steps things up a few notches. Now you're perceiving, planning, solving problems, engaging in relationships, and experiencing a broad range of emotions. The cerebral cortex is even more advanced. It's our evolutionary advantage because this part of our brain feels inspired, creates art, can think more inventively, and solve challenging problems. Recognizing your brain's responses to a situation will help you cope. So we're going to explain these areas of your brain and their responses further. Think of your brain as a house. The bomb shelter is the most basic, lowest level of your brain. It's the basement. It's not pretty. Details don't matter here. This is temporary. It's a temporary refuge or safety zone that you can't live in, but your brain sends you here automatically when it's necessary. When suffering is too great, you're blinded to everything except surviving that present moment. To help you do that, your brain moves you into the basement where only your most primitive impulses reside: fight, flight, or just hold on for dear life. You can cope with this nightmare because your brain is hiding you here to protect you, because not coping could be fatal. When my daughter was in a near fatal car accident, she asked her brain surgeon why she couldn't remember the accident at all. He explained that the moment she was hit and the car hit her in the head, actually hit her, all cognition stopped. Her brain could focus on surviving, making sure blood was flowing and oxygen was pumping to her organs. Using energy to perceive and process what was happening was a luxury her brain could not afford if she was going to survive. All details instantly become frivolous in the shadow of your extreme pain, or the sensation that you are dying, or when you panic because your heart is racing, or you're dripping sweat in extreme heat that you can't get relief from, or you're shivering and your teeth are chattering with extreme cold. Whatever in your body has sent you into your panic room. So what does frivolous mean? When you're suffering in the extreme, you are not going to notice your caregiver's new haircut, period. That gives you a little bit of context what I mean. So if the basement is your bomb shelter, the main floor of your house is your mammalian brain, your living space. It would benefit you to find your way out of the basement to this beautiful space where your logical mind can think more clearly. What if you're suffering all day, every day, without a break? Ask yourself in that moment, how extreme is this? Maybe it's possible to climb out of it. If a new symptom crops up, or if you had an accident and made a big mess that you can't pick up, maybe you dropped all your pills and you don't have the energy to get down and gather them again. These are rough situations, but they're not the end of the world. Living with suffering can mean balancing on the edge of breaking down in tears. Maybe you're always barely holding it together. But running into the basement doesn't make it safer in these cases. Actually, it hurts you to panic as a gut response to every problem. Ron Davis tells us that emotional exertion causes PEM as much as physical exertion. ME is so horrible, you truly could panic all day, every day over this huge tragedy of your condition. But remaining in flight or fight mode, paralyzed by dread always is very bad for you. If you can manage to leave the bomb shelter, you'll start seeing paths to helping yourself. You'll start hydrating better, taking your supplements, bathing maybe with the help of a caregiver, higher brain functions that can help you cope with daily life can go numb in fight or flight. That is only meant for your extremes. And believe me, your extremes are very different from the average person. Work at minimizing the impulse to panic. If you need that response to survive, your brain will send you there automatically. When you're not in the bomb shelter, panicking, and when your daily needs are under control, you can climb to the heights of your cerebral cortex and dream. This is also where you can think outside of the box, find creative solutions to your big problems, and work out impossible dilemmas. That can't happen in panic mode or even in daily survival mode. Whenever you can manage to free your mind of worry, creative solutions can flow. My son is a musician who can't make music, but he discovered poetry. In those long hours alone in the dark, he reached for something more than just surviving. I've seen amazing art by people whom I know are suffering terribly every day. Linda Crowhurst is a great example. Her artwork just blows my mind. Whatever creativity you can discover, especially if it's only daydreaming or imagining, it will help you tremendously to cope with your impossible life. But it's not possible in the moment when you're suffering greatly or when your daily needs like eating or toileting are not being met. These will keep your mind in the basement or the main floor of living and surviving. To rise to your creative loft, pictured here for reinforcement, all these photos are meant to help you, to really help you get there. You must either solve or release the essential needs for that moment. If you can get to the loft, you can experience more peace of mind, more hope. So it's worth the effort to climb those stairs mentally and momentarily allow your mind to set aside your fears and your more basic needs. But this is not your brain's full story. Your ME brain is unique. The challenges that make what I've shown you more difficult, I'm going to show you in a minute. It's important to understand. Let's take a look at an ME brain compared to a healthy brain. You're going to break your arm patting yourself on the back when you see the challenge you have been up against surviving this disease. Okay, so here's a normal brain compared to ME damage. Dr. Byron Hyde's PDF, An Introduction for Physicians and Patients to Modern SPECT Technology for Identifying Major Microvascular Brain Pathology in ME and Toxic Brain Injury, for patients invisible on CT and MRI brain mapping. So this brain mapping is on a microvascular level. So if you can imagine how complicated your brain is, and there are teeny tiny capillaries in there that are struggling to get blood flow to certain places or to activate your neurons with the nourishment that they need or whatever. I'm definitely not a scientist. The point is, on the right, he has outlined various areas of the brain to show you where this damage is occurring and what that means. So I'm going to quote him. Injury to the integrity of the microvascular neuron bed in the human brain is potentially capable of inflicting major organizational change, including short and long-term memory dysfunction, motor dysfunction, rapid exhaustion due to cortical or basal ganglia injury, hormonal deregulation, autoimmune deregulation, affecting the ability to control infection, proprioceptive or vasopressor dysfunction, as in POTS, central nervous system administrative functional deficits, affecting ability to regulate cardiac, hormonal, immune, gastrointestinal, and other body symptoms. That's that autonomic dysfunction, like my son who gets so cold his teeth chatter and 73 degrees in his room. None of these 6 major brain injuries are usually seen in a CT or an MRI. Yet, these often massive vascular bed injuries can provoke major changes in the manner in which the entire human vascular, nervous, muscular, hormonal, and organ systems function. The black area, which I can't point to it, but with the pink outline, the black area within the left temporal lobe indicates a severe loss of function. The changes that are so severe, they could be compared to a major cerebrovascular injury or stroke. However, the damage is diffuse, microvascular, and it's a neuron energy level so low that it can't be seen in a normal CT or MRI. But you can see it here. Do you ever feel like you've been poisoned? I know my son says that all the time. Similar findings may be seen in toxic chemical brain injuries. All right, I want you to stop and soak this information in because this here is visible proof, physical proof of what you experience in your extreme symptoms all the time, day after day, month after month. So I really want you to take it in. The great majority of doctors have never seen images like that and have received no education about your illness. Even worse, maybe their colleagues have convinced them that your illness is a known fake, that your symptoms are psychogenic, real, but psychologically caused, and you're making yourself worse on purpose or subliminally. When enough doctors, nurses, and lab technicians tell you that nothing is wrong with you, you begin to doubt yourself. Could you be making yourself sick? Maybe you test it like a rebellious little kid who purposely makes himself sick. My oldest son once failed a class to teach his teacher a lesson, but she wasn't harmed, he was. The most important thing you can do is believe yourself. Believe your symptoms, believe your limits, have confidence in your reality, and resist being characterized as anything but truly, physically, chronically very sick. Ask a simple question. Have you ever heard of myalgic encephalomyelitis, ME for short, or chronic fatigue syndrome, CFS, or ME/CFS? Long COVID could be the same disease. You may have heard people say, I have long COVID. Well, my son has long mono, or you could have long flu. A typical answer to that question is, I've heard of it, but I don't really know about it. This is your opportunity to educate. Now, I'm not talking about an optometrist, a dentist, or any other doctor. I'm only talking about your primary care physician or someone like a neurologist that would be directly involved in your body's care. When it comes to your optometrist or your dentist or any other, you hurt yourself and you go get a cast or whatever, don't tell them that you have ME. Tell them you have a neurological condition or a serious neurological condition that makes you very sensitive to light and sound, etc. You describe your accommodations you need, simply saying, I have a serious neurological condition. They don't need to be educated about ME. But your doctor, your normal doctor that is going to be taking care of you has to believe you. All right. So be calm, be factual, keep your words very few as possible. I encourage you to practice what you would say to your doctor when you're alone. Practice it. Because if you go rambling on, his ears are going to close. Like MS, ME is a chronic, progressive neurological disease that does not show up in standard labs. I'm very worried that I'll get worse without taking the proper precautions. Now, that was simple, right? I have information I'd like to send to you to quickly get you up to speed on what's going on with me so that you can help where possible. All right? That was very easy. This will be in your transcript or whatever. Avoid doctors with a psychogenic theory for ME. Anyone that thinks it's in your head or tells you to get psychiatric evaluation or sneers at you or rolls their eyes at you, anybody like that, you just get up and walk out. I know it sounds rude, but you're fighting for your life here. You're not fighting the disease, you're fighting the ignorance. And if you want to say something on your way out the door, you can say something like this. In 1700, if you had epilepsy, you were possessed. And if you got cancer, you were cursed by a witch. I thought doctors today were supposed to be open to science and research because we've got the science and the research about ME. So that's just my 2 cents. I don't know if you're going to have the nerve to say something like that to your doctor, but like I said, if he's being disrespectful to you, just walk out. Don't waste your time and hopefully don't pay the bill. So avoid doctors with the psychogenic theory, but be assured that ME is finally being taught. I know that Mount Sinai in New York, they're teaching it. Different places are starting to teach it. And there is, that continuing education element that Bateman Horn is doing so well that we can encourage doctors and nurses to take advantage of if they're interested in that. But sending some PDFs, very simple, directed toward doctors from the CDC or the NIH, these different organizations that are very authoritative, can help them get up to speed. You have to assess their attitude, though. How determined are they to dismiss you? They might have an ulterior motive, such as they want to avoid taking care of you if they don't understand it all the way. And if they can't cure you, some doctors want to be a hero. And if they hear about something too complicated, they don't want to learn about it. If they share something that's inaccurate that they've heard, be calm and factual. Don't get upset or show any emotion because this is your role. Your role is not to look like there's something wrong with you, like, oh, she's emotionally invested in having this disease. You don't want to be like that. You want to be calm and factual and correct them and say you can send them something about that. And then you can follow up and do that. The comparisons, about the epilepsy or cancer can really help, even if someone is on your side and trying to learn. It will help them get their mind around, why haven't I heard of this? And it's simply that the education is not there. Very simple. You can tell them, please believe me. My symptoms are real, and there's very little medical support for me. Now, when you say something like this, you are setting them up to be your hero, and this is what you want. People that have an extensive medical education usually have strong egos, and there's nothing wrong with catering to that ego to get what you need. So this is, my symptoms are horrible and I have very little medical support. They can step in and say, well, I'm here to support you. I want to support you. I want to learn so I can support you. Try not to patronize them. Don't let your tone or your expression look condescending or patronizing, even if, of course, you know more than they do. That's a given. But you have to think, what is going to serve me best in any communication? What is going to serve me? What's going to serve you is getting them on your side, not proving a point, not proving you're smarter or whatever. I actually believe doctors. Here's my confession. My son went to doctors for 10 years and they did all these blood tests. And how am I supposed to know any different? That we even got a brain MRI and they all said nothing was wrong with him. And I believe them. It wasn't until my son, with tears in his eyes, begged me to believe him that he had a real, true physical disease and it was not psychological. Because at that point, when that happened, he's 5'10", he weighed 113 pounds. He couldn't walk anymore. And we went to the emergency room. They gave him IV overnight to hydrate him and things like this. But they sent a social worker in the next morning to hand us a referral for 2 weeks in a psychiatric unit. Can you believe this? This is what they did to my son. And at that point, he was crying and telling me, don't do that. I know this is a physical disease. And that was the moment I believed him. It was too late. He was bedbound. But at least I did believe him. And now I'm trying to compensate by helping other people. Hopefully it'll benefit as much as I've harmed my son, it'll benefit more people. So we found a specialist, and the specialist educated my son's doctor. So she requested prescriptions and provided diagnoses, codes to his doctor so they could prescribe it because the specialist is out of state. There's nobody in the low country of South Carolina that is an ME specialist. So where we live, it's kind of a wasteland. So we have this great specialist. She's in Arizona. And when she would prescribe things, they would take the recommendations, give them to my son, no questions asked. And I would follow up with, information, things to help them really get a grasp of why we need it. And, he has anti-seizure drugs. He has lorazepam, not for anxiety, not for the regular thing, but because of his neurological situation. It suppresses that neurological activity. He had a seizure once just because of a loud noise. So this is what the lorazepam does for him. So don't give up. Don't give up on the doctor if they are kind and open. The consequence of ignorance is the worst. They might care about you, but they're at a loss to understand what's going on. This could be your family, it could be a doctor, it could be anybody, friends. And you have to get through, you have to be able to cope with their misunderstanding. They're feeling like you're exaggerating. I mean, they've known you a long time. They're like, come on, snap out of it. It's been long enough. You've been singing this tune for the last year. Come on now. What's really going on? And this is the hardest thing to deal with. It is the hardest. And sometimes people push themselves to be able to participate so they don't look like a total lump. That could wreck you. So you have to prioritize yourself. You have to know, understand, and believe that you are a valuable, precious, worthy person without being productive or contributing what you feel guilty about not contributing to the situation, whether it's your living situation, your social situation. If you can't contribute or participate, you are valuable anyway. And those things don't equal your value, but that's hard. Don't pressure yourself. Don't yield to that pressure that friends or family put on you to attend a Christmas party or a graduation or even a wedding, things that you would love to be able to do. And if you feel that you could possibly tolerate sitting in a chair for 2 hours to be at that thing, you have to use a wheelchair to get around. You have to have somebody with you that's an advocate that can help you get you to a quiet room if you become overwhelmed. You have to work with your accommodations for this disease. Don't pretend that there aren't any, that you don't need any. You need them. And have somebody, an advocate, go with you and work with you. And, you don't care if other people see this. Who cares what they think? You're keeping yourself from becoming bedbound by doing these things. So value yourself enough to stand up for yourself and resist, that pushing. Love your body. Your body is trying so hard every minute. Your cells are trying, your neurons are trying, your gut is trying. Think of all of those parts of your body holding you in spite of what they're fighting against in this disease. So suffering, what you're going through, this is my son. I had a picture of somebody um, in bed, whatever, with the eye mask and all of that, that I had AI draw because I've never used AI before. And I thought, this is an example. I don't have to show my son every 5 seconds. What are people going to think? But every single image that AI chat GPT gave me, the person looked relaxed. They looked like they were enjoying their rest. And I'm like, come on, that's not what rest is like for people with ME. So I had to use this. I hope you can see it. My son's eyebrows are not relaxed. They've got that, turned up thing going on because he's not comfortable. He's not happy about resting here. He's uncomfortable. He's never comfortable. So I had to share this photo instead. And for you, I want you to think about what you're suffering, what you've been through, and to forgive yourself if, overexerting or mistakes you've made, or even mistakes others have made you worse. You have to let go of that past and just mourn it. You can't control it. So acknowledging the harm, allowing yourself to grieve this situation and everything that you've lost is the most healthy thing you can do. Don't pretend it away. Don't shrug it off. You have to grieve. And if you're very severe, maybe you can't even cry. When my son is going through something horrific, he can't bawl. I see tears trickle down his cheek. That's my clue. He is really suffering. And I have to take a tissue and dry his face because he's too weak to reach up and do it himself. So whatever you need to do, you've got to release that valve and let it out. This situation is so extreme that you're in, depending on how severe you are, that your grief should match that level. If you've ever been to a funeral where the widow or the mother has thrown herself on the coffin screaming, I have at one time. And to see that picture, to feel that, I'm going to start crying, is to understand her grief. And you have the right to grieve that hard and understand your own grief, because that's how horrific this is. That ocean of grief if you don't go through it, if you hold it in and control your response to this, it won't go away. It will fester and hurt you emotionally and physically. I'm not saying you have to cry all day, every day. I'm not saying you have to grieve like this continually, but if you've been holding it in, you have to get it out of your system. You have to. ME is just the worst. Severe ME and very severe ME. It's a living death. So you can't like just, you know, it's not like terminal cancer where you bow out, your family around you holding your hand and kissing your cheek and telling you they love you. When you're suffering in the extreme with ME, you can't even tolerate someone in the room, let alone holding your hand and kissing your cheek. You can't tolerate it. It's painful to your brain. So you have to grieve deeply all of these losses, this living death, your deepest well of sorrow for the losses, name them, face them, honor your pain, your health, your friends, your career, your hobbies, your sports, outings, restaurants, shopping, hiking, beaches, mountains, streams, that dock from your childhood on the lake where you used to jump in shouting and screaming. This is what you have lost. And the future, a trip you may never take, that goal you may never achieve. For my son, who's very severe and stuck in that bed, he dreams of standing at a sink, washing his hands, holding his hands under warm running water. That's what he grieves. And leaning over that sink, brushing his own teeth. You have no idea how horrible it is to brush a 35-year-old's teeth for him. It's not a pretty sight. Nobody enjoys that. So grieve these things. And when you have grieved deeply, you are actually facing, not running from or fighting, but facing the horror of this disease. Your fear of what future might hold, of what might happen, these betrayals and all of that. You're honoring it. You're honoring that fear, all the dreams lost. But once you've been through that, you could still honor yourself, the potential of the little things you can do, the potential of people in your life understanding you and supporting you. There are things to appreciate, things that are worth staying alive for. But you're not going to get there unless you've gone through that fire, down to the deep well of grieving. You have to allow yourself to experience it in order to cope with what's next. Like I said before, love your body, every cell working so hard. Get through that grief. Of course, you're going to grieve more later, but get through it initially if you haven't, and then begin to cope. This is your reality. You faced it, you understand it, and you're going to find whatever glimmer of hope or light that could be there for you, making it up to that loft of creativity when you can, and reaching for something, anything that can bring you out of your suffering temporarily. I'd like to share with you some URLs you're going to get, both GalenWarden.com and SevereMeCFS.com. Go to my website. Here you can find all kinds of things about me, about James, and the most important one is at the bottom of the list, resources, where you will see Byron Hyde's PDF. You'll recognize the illustration of the brain, and you can learn about that brain mapping more. But you can also find resources for your family, your doctor, the CDC, the NIH, things about ME. So explore in there. I have a TikTok channel where I've posted a lot of videos. It's kind of embarrassing because you can see my journey of first learning how to make a video and, being very shy, and they're like 30 seconds long, to, recent ones where I'm very comfortable and they're 5 minutes and I get more into it. So that's TikTok. And then I've shared many of them on my Instagram, which is instagram.com, severe, MECFS. So that is my presentation. And I think, David, we are going to be able to do some questions at the end. So maybe you could tell us about that. I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah. So if anybody who is here has questions, feel free to unmute and ask your question.
Okay, let's see.
And I don't know, did Debbie send you a list of any pre-submitted questions?
No, I don't think I got that, but if you have
I
that, maybe you could
I
share it.
don't either. I don't know if
Yeah,
maybe we didn't get any pre-submitted.
maybe they didn't do it. Yeah.
I
But
have a
yes,
question for you.
yeah.
Not as a sufferer, but as a caregiver. Um, one of the things that one of my fears is that I'm missing something or that there's some treatment that we should have tried that we didn't try, something like that, that could make them significantly better and that I
Mhm.
just missed, right? I didn't get them to the right doctor. I didn't find, there's so many treatments out there, potential
Yeah,
treatments. Um, and even if you do try something, did you try it correctly, right? Did
right,
you do it right, right?
right.
And, when you have your loved ones suffering and it's just hard to be at peace with what you're doing, right? It's
Mhm.
like,
Yeah,
need to do more, need to try more, need to be more efficient about trying things because that's the other thing. It's just like takes so long to try and see if something's helping. There's so much
yeah,
noise in the system. It's just, I don't know. I don't know if you have any
yeah.
thoughts on that.
Sure. So with my son being bedbound from the beginning of when I started caring for him back in 2019, we just couldn't believe it. It's like I went through this period of like, what is going on? Because at that point we didn't have a specialist, and the person who had diagnosed him wouldn't do virtual. But anyway, we tried just about everything. I mean, so I've got a bookshelf with the medical medium and, all kinds of things. And, people, expensive things, we gave him vitamin B shots and with like some kind of bovine whatever in it. I mean, I did so many things that had no impact at all. But I heard through Facebook, and I'm telling you, these 25% Facebook groups, there's a few of them that can be very, very helpful. I saw in there about Abilify, and that actually really helped him. Not at first, like you said, you got to be patient. He had to go really slow. We jumped up too quickly from 5 to 7, milligrams, and he had the most horrible experience that it makes you want to stop.
Mhm.
Excuse me. I gotta. But at that point, he did have the specialist, and she said, "No, no, no, don't stop. Just back up, stay where you were on the 5 for 2 weeks, and then go up to, 5.5 and 6 and see what happens as you go up more gradually." So we did that. He got up to 1 milliliter, not to the 2, the recommended 2 max. He got up to the 1, and all of a sudden, he could feed himself, because when he first got sick, I was feeding him every bite he ate. I was using this hydrant water bottle with a 48-inch tube so that he could get a drink of water. I mean, it was horrific. And the Abilify enabled him to have a little bit of energy, a little bit of stamina, and be able to feed himself, pick up 4 ounces of water in a little plastic cup. I mean, these changes were monumental for us. He could tolerate, me brushing his teeth. None of that was happening when he was like super, super severe. Then about a year later, we found something called oxaloacetate. He takes a very high dose of that. And when that started working, and I'm going to say, David, that in between there were a lot of things that did absolutely nothing for him. Nothing. And I've got a drawer full of prescriptions that I should just throw out, but it doesn't feel responsible to just throw them out, you know?
I have that same drawer. Yeah.
And but the oxaloacetate did the trick. He was able to use a wireless keyboard and look at his computer, which is at the foot of his bed. We set up a mic on the little table next to him, and he was able to sing quietly into it. He's a professional musician, so he has a $2,000 mic. And with this mic that is so sensitive, he could go into his computer and make it sound louder and all these things. So, what I'm saying is there are two things that have helped him out of all the things we've tried. And if we hadn't tried those two things, he probably would have killed himself by now. I'm just being honest, because he could not stay, and I could not stay feeding him every bite that he got. And he has said from the beginning, I don't want a feeding tube. So, that's where it would have just fallen apart. He has now slid back. We don't know why. In the last, I'd say 2 months, he has stopped being able to eat without THC like this. And now that's starting to even not be great. And he can eat one meal a day. And other than that, he has a snack of yogurt and a snack of peanut butter on crackers. And, it's rough. It's really rough right at the moment, hoping it'll turn around or something. But we're not stopping the oxaloacetate because he's terrified. If I stop that, what if that makes me go into a coma? What if my ME has progressed to so severe that that doesn't help me anymore? So I think, and the Abilify doesn't help me anymore because our doctor had us try a break from Abilify and then a reboot to see if that, would kick him into gear. Didn't do anything. But he's keeping the Abilify. He's not giving up on that, even though when he stopped it, he didn't get any worse. So I'm on your page. We have no clue. We are not doctors. We are not, PhD scientists with the microscope, knee deep in all of this. I'm an artist and a writer. I am not a scientist at all. And to tell you the truth, I cringe when his specialist starts talking medical stuff and using jargon like the ATP and all of this stuff. It's so hard for me. But but I can't feel guilty. I can't blame myself. I can't say, oh, I should have gotten a medical degree 10 years ago because this was going to happen. And you can't either. We we are not responsible for knowing all of this stuff, period. Just like they weren't responsible, back when they first got sick for knowing they should have rested and radically rested to keep from getting worse. We can't blame anybody for any of this because the ignorance is ubiquitous. Everybody's ignorant. And the best we can do is be where we are, be there for them, love them, and have them know that your love is unconditional. That's really all that matters. I walk into my son's room, especially when he's doing badly, and I never, ever, ever carry my stress with me. I leave that stress at the door. The door to my son's room is a portal. It's a magical portal that prevents the world from getting in there and my stress and my anxiety from getting in there. I come in there light and peaceful, and whatever I have to say to him is light and peaceful, or whatever we have to do. There's no slamming something down, there's no rolling my eyes, or none of that. It is all as calm and loving as I can possibly be, because this is my interaction with him. This is the only person he sees, so I'm not going to make that a negative experience. And I'm sorry I went on so long. I've got more people here.
No, thank you.
I don't know if that was helpful. It's just our experience.
Yeah.
There will be a link to the microvascular imaging. Yes, that's that severe ME/CFS caregiving.com/resources. Just scroll down that page and you'll see that brain, and that is the whole PDF. Hold on a second. So let's see what else. Okay, that is the last one I see. Do you see any other messages, David?
That's all I've seen as well.
Okay, all
Well,
right.
thank you very much for presenting your information that you've acquired the hard way.
Right, right.
And
Yeah,
good luck to you and your son in the future.
thank you. And when do you think these materials will be available?
In a day or two.
Okay, great.
I can usually get the video out quickly, but getting the transcript cleaned up takes a little longer. So,
Yeah, okay, all right.
all right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
folks. Thanks for joining. And
Thanks, Mishka, Jane, Christina, and Katarzyna for coming. Thank you.
all right, folks. See you next time. Bye-bye.